students, welcome to the April 3rd lesson. Started out with some lo-fi chill, so if you need to lo-fi chill more, you're welcome to it. Yes, this is our lesson on medicine and architecture. I'm sure you have been waiting very long for this. So if you have the Christianity documents for lesson 33, you don't need to watch this. I'm going to create a separate video for you that goes over a lot of the same information. So I wouldn't bother watching this one. I'd wait for the Christianity video, and I will post that on Monday. This is, though, for people doing medicine and architecture in diffused Kongo. This is lesson 33. I pushed these out, before the emergency closure, but I'm giving you time now to work on them so that, you can get credit for them. So this is how next week's going to go for scheduling. This is about Monday morning, April the 6th. I don't have the dates on here. I just have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but Monday morning, April the 6th, I'm going to post the lesson on Christianity. Then Monday afternoon, this is where I'm going to be sort of following the schedule, mostly following the schedule that you're going to see. But I did say that I was going to do Zoom office hours for medicine and architecture on Monday afternoon, and I want to stick to that promise. And also because I don't really want to do Christianity on Wednesday afternoon when it's due on Wednesday. I'd like to give you guys kind of a day. So the Zooming is going to happen Monday afternoon, and it's going to be these times. This is based on the schedule that you are going to get. I think Ms. Dini's going to hand it out today, Friday the 3rd. The thing is that it won't be scheduled on the schedule that Ms. Dini sends out. Monday afternoon Zooming is not scheduled. I would like to do it on Monday afternoon because that's what I told you I was going to do, and I don't think it's going to be too big of a problem. And if you can't do Zooming on Monday afternoon, I will give you another time. So medicine and architecture Zooming is just happening Monday afternoon. Then on Tuesday afternoon, I will Zoom office hours for Christianity. Tuesday is going to be a day where normally we have, at least next week, we would have normal Zoom. We would have a Zoom time. And I am going to do that for Christianity on Tuesday afternoon. And you can see the periods that can come see me on those times. Okay. Wednesday. I am not going to Zoom on Wednesday, but I will be available by email to answer your questions until 4:15. I might not email you immediately, but I'm going to try to answer all emails I get before 4:15 by 4:15. And then I'm moving the time that your lesson 33 and thesis statement is due to Wednesday at 8 p.m. I'll probably post the thesis statement on, when do I want to do that? Maybe I'll do that today. Maybe I'll do that Monday. But the thesis statement's going to go on another Google form. Okay, so the point of this lesson is that, and this is really going to be our last lesson for Unit 3, our last lesson about Africa. We've been talking all the time about a traditional culture, an indigenous culture, it says here, and then how does that change through cultural diffusion? So Kongo Kingdom was about the traditional, lesson 32 is about your traditional culture. And now we are going to be looking at their diffused culture. So lesson will teach you about certain aspects of Congo's culture that change because of cultural diffusion. So that's what you're looking at. And this lesson is going to be specifically about medicine and architecture. We were going to write a multi-paragraph essay. We are not going to do that anymore on this lesson. And you are just going to get graded for a thesis statement that I will talk about at the end of this video. And I still haven't established the number of points, but it'll be six-ish points. Okay. So what do we have to do? So I'm gonna kind of separate from the presentation here a little bit and take a look at the docs. And I have, and there are 4 docs, and I'm gonna end up going through 2 of the docs in this lesson. And if you take some of the things I have and put them in your organizer is a completion grade. I'm okay with that. It would be almost like we are in class and I put some things in the organizer and you copy them from me. That is okay for the completion grade. Um, so, step 1, select and read the 4 documents. Read the 4 documents related to the topic. Make sure you read the information about the author as well. It's best to read all 4 documents, then to work on the organizer. Okay, so I read this. I read this. I read this. I'm not expecting you to read it on this video. I'm just, kind of I'm identifying here. Okay, read this. Okay, great. Okay, so I read through the documents. You really should do that before you get to the organizer. And now we are going to look at the organizer here. Okay. And I've put here the topic medicine and architecture. Somebody asked me before, like, do we do one or the other? Nope, you're doing both in this particular case. And you'll see kind of how they're intertwined a little bit. So document 1, I already have written here, written 1980 by Basil Davidson, and that's what it is talking about. Although I notice here that the author talks about the excerpt is Mr. Davidson's analysis of primary source letters from King Afonso to the King of Portugal. Letters to the King of Portugal, 1526, by King Nzinga Mbemba, Christian name King Afonso, wrote a series of letters starting in 1517 to the King of Portugal during his reign as king. So while Basil Davidson writes this in his book, a lot of this, and the quote here wasn't really well defined before, and I've put these quotes in by this morning. So if you looked at this before Friday morning, I didn't have these quotes in here. But I wanted to say that, like, a lot of this, like this whole thing, and I can put a comment on here, I don't mind. This whole thing, this quote is from Afonso, you know. Um, so Basil Davidson is actually not saying a lot here. A lot of this is from the king. So that might come up when I do this, document analysis here. Okay. All right. It says analyze the documents. For the question asking, by the way, I have to say that a lot of the slides here were done by Ms. Lunsford, so I wanted to give credit to her. Thank you, Ms. Lunsford, for putting this framework together. As you know, students, Ms. Murphy, Ms. Lunsford, Mr. Lynn, and I all worked together to create a lot of these documents. But Ms. Lunsford did a lot of good work on this, so I wanted to give her credit for it. But she put down, for the question asking author's point of view and how they feel about the topic, you have to think pretty deeply about who wrote the information. What is their motivation? Does that influence what they decided to include or omit? Does the point from their writing, does their point of view create weakness in the reliability of the document, or the opposite, or create strength, right? Yeah, let me just put like, or create strength. I think that is what that's what we're looking for here. Okay, so those are a lot of great questions. Miss Lunsford has so many great questions about that. Okay, so I see Basil Davidson, British historian, writer, expert African history, particularly knowledgeable on the subject of Portuguese Africa prior to the 1974 Carnation Revolution. Okay, I think I've looked up Carnation Revolution since I first read this doc, but before, when I first read this doc, I had no idea what that was. So, you can look that up, but it's just kind of saying, it's kind of not super recent history. It's pretty, ancient, not ancient, but medieval history, things from several hundred years ago. So let's see what I wrote down for here. I did say that he is a historian expert in African history, so he probably does not have much bias in what he writes, and that's fine. And the other thing I wrote here is to say that he's quoting Afonso, right? So um, Afonso could be biased towards his own people, but I think, our ultimate question here is whether Congo accepted or resisted Portuguese culture. And I think knowing what the king said, the king of Congo said about this is, a great start. So that's kind of for the point of view. So it's not anything, extreme. It's not that, there's a lot of propaganda here. It's coming from this doc is coming from a historian who is just quoting this primary source. So there's not a whole lot of biased issues from from the professor's point of view. I mean, if he was just quoting docs that showed Afonso in some sort of bad light, maybe we could say that. But really, all we see here is a letter from the king of Congo to the Portuguese, and see how that works. Um, yeah, we didn't talk about this too much, and I maybe could have had this as a separate lesson, but what we're talking about here is the Portuguese came to the Congo. The reasons why we may talk about in the next quarter, but just know that the Portuguese are the main kind of foreign diffusion into Congo. They're the people that meet the Congolese before really any other group that's not like immediately around Congo. Like Muslims from North Africa, we don't really have any evidence they came to Congo before the Portuguese. Arabs in the Middle East, even the Swahili city states or Great Zimbabwe, we don't see a lot of evidence that Congo met with those groups before the Portuguese got there. Congo did have influence in their part of Central Africa, and maybe I'll find a map of Congo to kind of show you on Monday or Tuesday to give you a sense. You could look that up too. But the Portuguese, came to Congo. They were sailing, they were exploring, and they bring these different kinds of culture into Congo. Okay, so that is the issue with background and point of view. Okay. Then we have source reliability for the question about how reliable the source is. Please remember to discuss the author. Just looking here at the time. Oh, wow. Make sure you just don't state the author's credentials, but also why that makes them trustworthy. Ms. Lunsford gave some examples in the accent paragraphs that she read that people, didn't really, they just said, here's one that kind of says, it says who wrote it and when they wrote it. Does that make something reliable? Well, no, you got to tell me, you need to say like, what is the, what is it about their background that makes it reliable or not? You can't just tell me the year and say, oh, they wrote it in this year, therefore it's reliable. So as far as reliability, that's actually that's down here. So let's do that, and then we'll talk about claims and evidence. I see here that the document has a high reliability. It's a primary source document from the King of Congo and analyzed by a professional historian. So, those are kinds of things we have talked about before. Okay, so that's source reliability. You can pause the video, of course, at any time to get some of these notes. The author's claim. So the claim, there's a lot of details here about the claim. The claim is what the author is representing about the topic. Again, our topic is either medicine or architecture, and kind of what the author is saying about if Congo is accepting that culture or not. So as far as the claim, I wrote something pretty simple, and the claim you don't I don't. I mean, you can take a little bit of time on it, but I think what is really going to be important here is the evidence that you find, because the evidence is going to focus your thesis statement and focus the corroboration piece at the end. So, what's the claim? King Afonso writes to the Portuguese for medical help, and as I read this, I read a lot of acceptance here. Your Highness has been kind to write to us, saying that we should ask in our letters for anything that we shall need, or we need, and that we shall be provided with everything. And as the peace and health of our kingdom depend on us, and so on. So this is not a letter like, "Hey, get out of my kingdom," or like, "Hey, we don't need your help." And Basil Davidson does write in here about medical staffs. I mean, this is kind of saying, hey, you said that we could, have this technology, have these supplies, and we're not doing that great, or people are ill, and we would like these supplies. So I think there's a lot of acceptance here. Um, I actually let's see, I put this as the second one. It doesn't really matter where you put this in the organizer, but this is what comes first. I first quote Davidson here. He wrote again with fresh requests for technical aid, asking this time for medical staffs. I mean, it's a pretty clear um, um, evidence for acceptance, right? And here's another quote that I found. Agreeable enough to send 2 physicians and 2 apothecaries and 1 surgeon. And if you don't remember what apothecary is, you can look down here. A person that gives out or dispenses medicines. I'll give you a few seconds to think of the modern day word for that. Begins with a P. That would be a pharmacist. Okay, very good. Congratulations. But the other thing I wanted to put down here, because I think it's going to frame my thesis statement a little bit later, is this last little bit that Basil Davidson writes. Like other efforts to introduce European techniques, this appeal for doctors seems to have been fruitless. And here we have a definition of fruitless, if you don't know, not productive. So I think that's actually an interesting wrinkle in this. Is that the Congo people? Let's see. Did I highlight? No, I didn't highlight all of it. The Congo people want this help, but the Portuguese don't seem to want to help them. So I'm just going to put that as far as my learning, as far as my knowledge here about how am I going to write a thesis statement about how Congo is accepting or resisting these kinds of culture. Here we see a lot of acceptance, but not necessarily the Portuguese wanting to help. There is an inference that they did help because, as I read before, that they should ask their letters for anything that they need, and that if Afonso is clearly asking for these things, so he kind of knows that they exist. It's not like the Portuguese never had a doctor on board, or never had an apothecary, a physician on board, right? It seems like Afonso knows about this stuff, so that's why he's asking for this new stuff. So that's kind of something we actually haven't really seen in any of our learning yet about Africa. Is that a diffusion that starts but kind of stops from the diffuser, right? Like it would almost be like, if in Axum, people from Greece and Rome spreading Christianity into Axum, like just stop sharing their faith or something like that. It's not that easy to do all the time, because usually once cultural diffusion gets started, it doesn't really stop. It's not like, you can think of cultural diffusion in technology and the media. That diffusion is going to keep happening. It seems very unlikely it's going to stop. So That was my 20-minute timer, but I got a few more minutes here, so it might end up being 30-minute video. I don't know. Okay. So there is there's two pieces of evidence there. Okay. I'm actually going to do another doc real quick, because I want to get to corroboration. So I'll just leave that little nugget in there, that commentary on medicine and architecture, so that you can take a look at that. Now, medicine and architecture 2. Here we have about UNESCO. I'm not going to read all of this because I do want to move on. But what do we know about UNESCO? Well, I wrote here. It says here, UNESCO helps preserve and restore historical sites and monuments from around the world to ensure global heritage from the past that can be passed on to future generations. And so, I wrote my little bit there as far as the inference that I could make about it. Okay. And what do I see in the claim? Well, I see things about the capital. It's describing now the architecture. So, one area of our learning in this organizer is medicine, and one is architecture. Could they both be in the same doc? That's possible in 3 and 4, but there seem to be kind of two separate topics. So, I'm not really looking for medicine in this one. I'm just looking for architecture. And as you read through it, this is, you know what? I'm just going to give you one piece of evidence here. I think you can figure out the other. But I will say, that I don't see a lot of resistance in here, right? You can look at this document and kind of see like what's here. Now let me look at these and see. Partial view of Mbanda Congo that mixed traditional Congolese building materials and Portuguese style. Some of you might think like, well, maybe this shows resistance because they use traditional materials. And I would not put that down if you were thinking that. The fact that they mix is still acceptance. You don't have to completely ditch your culture to accept another culture. That may be the case in some cases, but here with architecture, architecture mixes. You can have different styles of buildings. So I would not put resistance for something like this. I might use this as an acceptance piece of evidence because mixing the styles together would be accepting it. The only thing you may want to, if you do find something that says like, and the buildings in the countryside maintain their traditional style, then that would be something like a resistance thing. Okay, and then reliability. I think again, it's pretty reliable that UNESCO greatly researches these events. It's kind of pretty much telling you like it is. There's not overly positive, negative adjectives. So again, we have a highly reliable doc here. Okay, now to corroboration. All right, woo, we're getting through it. Okay, corroboration. Now, this organizer has, let's see, I'm using my, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 places to fill in stuff, fill in evidence. But you notice I'm only asking for 5. I'm only asking for 5 of the 12 to fill in, and you need to have at least 2 in the corroboration column. Okay? So if you have 3 in the corroboration column, that's fine. If you have 5 in the corroboration column, that would be okay too. That would be 5 pieces of evidence. The thing you need to check on is if you are correct. Because if you write something in the not corroborated section that is corroborated, that would be wrong. And if you just give me a whole bunch of not corroborated statements, that would also be wrong. So for the corroboration part, I'm going to go back to this and let's see what This slide is about documents and evidence. I'm going to post this slide. I'm going to post a slideshow with the video. So, okay. So corroboration. Let's do that. In the first column, what is corroborated by the sources? Write something you learned about your topic that was stated by at least 2 of the 4 sources, and then you just cite the sources. In the next column, tell which 2 sources corroborate or confirm that piece of learning. Okay. So what I need, so just kind of going back here, what evidence is corroborated, and then what are the sources? So that's what I want to do. Okay. Now, 1 and 2 are about kind of 2 different topics. One is about medicine, one is about architecture. But can we, and this is where your claim might help you, your evidence might help you. But also, if you make a corroborated statement that's not up here, or you kind of just say it in your own words, that's okay too. The goal is you want to make a corroborated statement that fits the docs, and it's not easy to do that. So this is the one that I came up with. You're welcome to use it. Okay. Congo experienced new kinds of medicine and architecture from the Portuguese. So the one thing that we know, at least from the first 2 docs, is that, that this is from the Portuguese. And I'm willing to suspect, I don't want to give you bad info here, but let's see. So I see Portuguese and that, and I see, let's see. Yeah, some stuff about Portugal here. So, really, officially this is, all the docs. The fact they get it from the Portuguese. So that's a start, right? And I'm okay with that being one of your 5 pieces, that the fact they got it from the Portuguese. And obviously, the medicine ones are probably going to corroborate pretty easily, and the architecture docs are going to corroborate pretty easily. So that's, as you get through the rest of the document, which I'm not going to do here, that's on you. As you get through the rest of the documents, you could figure that out. Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah, I am still recording. Great. Okay. All right. Then what evidence is not corroborated by the sources? Well, for this, I took a look at Doc 1, and it talked about how many people in the Congo had illnesses. Now, I have to say, I did this, and I made sure I looked at the other docs to make sure that that was not in any of the other docs. So for the not corroborated, you just have to be careful. You don't want to write anything that could be, evidence in the other documents. And this is what I came up with, and you could come up with others. So you need to fill in 5. I've given you 2 right here. You only need to do 3. What? Crazy. And you can do more if you want to. Here's something about contradiction here. Well, let's keep going through this. So, what is not corroborated with sources? Write down one fact or detail that it only appears in one of the sources, and then you state which source that one fact came from. So we kind of already did that. And then contradiction. We've talked about this with corroboration. We can have things that corroborate, statements that corroborate. We can have statements that don't corroborate. That just means that we only found that fact in one source. And then we can have things that directly contradict each other. So here's an example. If one source says that Congo embraced the slave trade while another says they fought against it, and nobody in my classes is doing the slave trade for reasons maybe I'll talk about in the next quarter. But if one says they embraced the slave trade while another says they fought against it, that would be an example where they not only do not corroborate a claim. Let me change. They contradict each other. So contradiction does fall into not corroboration, but it's also pretty descriptive to say they are opposed to each other. So for non-corroboration, you don't have to pick things that are opposed, because I don't think you're going to find in these documents a lot of things that say like opposite things, like Afonso really wanted medical aid. Oh, Afonso didn't really want medical aid. You're not going to find those things. You're going to find more that maybe a fact only is found in one source and not others. Okay. All right. And then finally, so you fill in this. And then finally, which document shows that change is accepted, which shows that change are resisted. That's just a list. And now we come to the thesis statement. This is what you will be graded on, and I will push out a Google form. We are almost done. Thank you for listening. In examining your information, make a decision. Did the Congo Kingdom accept or resist cultural diffusion from Portugal? And then you give me 2 reasons. That should be combined into one sentence, as a thesis statement should be. Thesis statements don't need to be long, but they are very structured. And if you don't follow that structure, you will get points off. And you've been doing thesis statements, the whole time. Your Axum thesis statements were okay. We didn't have a whole bunch of time on the Axum paragraphs to really make them good, and I'm okay with that because I wanted to, just see how you did with it and how you would improve. So I do have 2 examples from Mali and Axum. Mali accepted the cultural change of Islam by Mansa Musa, introducing Islamic practices and building universities that taught Islamic learning in Arabic. So there we have an example of Mali accepting in 2 ways, right? 2 ways that Mansa Musa introduces these Islamic practices, which would be like prayer and the mosques and things like that. And then the building universities that we learned out as well. So that's one example. Here's another example. Many people in cities in Axum accepted Greek because it was the language of international trade, but people in the countryside usually kept their traditional language of Giz. Okay. So that again, there's my camera. Let's move it up here. So those are 2 examples of thesis statements, and it follows the rules here. That it has 2 reasons. You combine it into one sentence, and I will post, like I said, I think I'm going to wait until Monday to post the Google form because I kind of want people to get the traditional Kingdom of Congo done. I don't want to confuse them. So that thesis statement will probably get pushed out on Monday after my lesson on Christianity, and we'll go from there. Okay, so that is how you do the organizer and the thesis statement. Let's go back to the schedule. Medicine and architecture people, I will see you on Monday afternoon at these times. Anybody in periods 1 and 2 can come at this time, 5 and 6 at this time, 7 and 8 at that time. Monday will also come the Christianity lesson, and then I will be seeing Christianity people during those times. Whew, that was quite a bit, and I'm sure you will do very well on it with the questions. Let me leave it on this right now to let the medicine and architecture people know. I will see them on Monday afternoon for Zoom hours. Hopefully you get a little bit done this afternoon, and then you are on to your weekend. Have a great day.